there's a lot of anticipation and a lot of fear around this notion that companies will become more profitable by replacing many of their human workers with AI. But you think that view is very deeply flawed. Why?
So there's a lot to unpack here. What I will say is I do think the work we do is going to be drastically reimagined. And so that does mean we're going to have different types of work, different types of, talent, upskilled talent. And the real way I think for me to think about it is not about individual jobs and that being a substitute for AI, but more so the tasks we do. And therefore, we start to redesign work in a much more meaningful way.
So let's stick with this idea of tasks, because are there certain tasks or areas where AI is poised to replace the work that humans currently do? And if so, where are the areas where humans will continue to be the better choice?
There certainly is. And we're already seeing so many exciting examples. Everything from content creation, document management, even software development in terms of actual coding, right? There are so many examples where work that is more standardized, repeatable, following a playbook, that work can be hugely assisted by AI. I think the thing, though, that's like the catch that's really interesting in this conversation is what then becomes the role of the human? And is it as if you take my job today and fully automate it in parallel to me? Or is it that I elevate and I start to actually act in a much more value-adding way for the organization, but with the fantastic tools of AI around me doing some of the work that actually I didn't need to be doing in the first place?
So in this vision, humans are still at the center of everything, but AI just becomes a powerful tool that they use. Can you give us an example of this in action, what it looks like?
Yeah, I mean, maybe just also a visual. Like I like to think of it as like all of our superhero cape. Like we all sort of need to put the cape on and we can do so much more with the work we do. But one example, I do a lot of work and research with software development. And some of the most recent research I've done actually shows that, you take a very experienced software developer and they are able to be 5x, 10x more productive with the use of agents. So you're still having that valuable software developer at the core, orchestrating work. They're able to do much more in terms of their value and productivity, but they're still at the core of the work. It's not actually done solo and independent without them.
Jean has a question to ask you. Go ahead, Jean.
Julie, let's get specific. If AI takes the rote work, but humans need to elevate, what skills actually rise in value? And be honest, are most companies really prepared to help people make that leap, or do they just hope the tech sorts itself out?
You hit the nail on the head. There are new skills. So for example, resourcefulness, grit, systems thinking, higher level problem solving, all of those skills that actually are typically more sort of conceptual and higher level in an organization, we need individual contributors to have the skills of managers. To your point, Jean, that is a real upskilling challenge, one that we need to be prepared for, and most companies are not prepared for it. Interestingly, our research also shows that companies who are getting the most value out of AI also have the most ambitious AI upskilling plans. So I think you're seeing those successful with AI being hand in hand with this type of upskilling program. But it's not without real challenges.
So when you talk about upskilling, can you give us an idea of how many people will need to be upskilled, and not only upskilled, but upskilled at once? And then also, is this going to be a one-off undertaking, or is this heavy lifting going to have to happen again and again and again?
Yeah, it's a new organizational muscle. And in fact, I think those companies that are going to be successful are going to be the ones that actually figure this out. Like, how do you actually drive a culture of continuous learning? How do you drive sort of at scale change management and upskilling? To answer your question, though, on like some specific examples, I mean, really, this is about giving people sort of not just understanding of AI fluency of like, how do I use the AI tools, but the ability to reinvent their jobs, to redesign their work again and again and again. And for order of magnitude, actually, it's interesting. I did a study right at the beginning when these models were becoming popular, and it's actually held very well over the last 2+ years, that said something like 70% of skills were going to be, I'm going to call it touched by AI, which is either replaced or significantly impacted by AI. And I still believe that's true. So if you imagine like 70% of the skills you use are going to have to change in some way, it's probably a pretty realistic estimation.